They say you should never eavesdrop on a conversation that concerns your own heart, but sometimes the truth walks right up to your ear and knocks. "You're just a burden," Anna said, crisp as the snap of a dry twig. And somewhere between the kettle's first whistle and the old clock's cough, my son Michael chose silence like a coat he could hide inside. His quiet hurt more than her words. Words bruise, silence stains. I am Helen, 73, the kind of woman who still folds grocery bags to reuse them and keeps rubber bands around door handles to stop the rattling in a storm. I have lived in this little house at the end of Ash Lane for 41 years. The floorboards know the map of my steps, and the kitchen window is framed by geraniums even in winter. Michael grew up here, learning to tie his shoes on the third stair where the light hits just right. When his father, my Frank, died 9 years ago, Michael carried the coffin on his shoulder and wept into my hair so hard I thought the tears would water me back to life. I held him then. Today he looked at the floor and held his tongue. It was a Saturday. Anna and Michael had come for a quick visit, the kind of phrase young people use now to make time behave. I'd set the table with the good blue plates, always 2 fingers width from the table's edge, and heated lentil soup because the air was the kind that crawls into your bones. Michael kissed my cheek, soft, distracted, already somewhere else. Anna took off her gloves, 1 finger at a time, like a pianist deciding whether to perform. "We need to talk about the future," she said, but the future was just a polite name for me. I poured tea. My hands trembled only once. The spoon clinked the rim, and I told myself it was just the steam. "Of course," I said, "tell me." The radiator hissed. Outside, the wind pushed a neighbor's trash bin, and it went thunk, thunk as if trying to remember its way home. Anna glanced at Michael, and then at the hallway where the family photos live, school portraits, the seashell frame from a forgotten summer, Frank's graduation picture with his tie crooked. She didn't look at me. "It's not healthy for you to stay here alone," she began. "The stairs, the cold, the maintenance. It's time we considered a transition." I know that word. I know the brochures with watercolor leaves and the smell of overly clean hallways. "You mean a home," I said, not unkindly. "For old people." Her smile pretended to be gentle. "For support," she said. "We worry about you." Michael nodded like a student caught without his homework. "Ma, it's just practical." Practical. The word pricked me. I have been practical my whole life. Patched elbows, mended socks, counted coins in a jam jar to buy Michael a bicycle second-hand, and painted it red so it would feel new. Practical is letting go of a dress you love because the hem won't forgive you anymore. Practical is sleeping on the side of the bed that doesn't creak to let your husband rest. Practical is not this, 2 young faces planning where to put me like a chair that no longer fits the room. I set the teapot down and the lid rattled. "There's a lift at St. Bridget's," Anna continued. "Multiple activities, and you'd have people around. You keep saying you feel lonely." I do sometimes, when the house expands at night and the clocks argue with one another. But loneliness is not the same as being stored. "I said I miss company," I replied. "I didn't say I miss my keys." Maybe I shouldn't have said it like that. Maybe I should have told them about last week, when I stood outside my own door with the groceries biting into my fingers, and the key wouldn't turn because someone had replaced the lock. Michael had changed it for safety after a break-in down the road, he said later, and the spare was on the way. That day I waited in the hallway for 40 minutes, the milk sweating through its own cold, until Mrs. Patel from next door spotted me and called Michael herself. He came, he was sorry, he hugged me, and then he hurried back to a meeting. Now, hearing Anna say burden, the memory of that key scraped the back of my throat. I can manage, I said. I've managed worse. The kettle clicked as if in agreement. I fall sometimes, I added, because truth is a kind of armor. But I know how to land. Michael's mouth opened, then closed. Anna placed her hand on his sleeve. Helen, love, we're thinking long-term. The heating bills, the property taxes. It's wasteful for you to keep a whole house. We could sell. She caught herself. We could rent it and put the money toward your comfort. There it was, the little slip of a skirt hem, the truth showing. I felt the room tilt slightly. On the hall table, between Frank's pipe and a bowl of pennies, lay the letter from the city about the reassessment, numbers marching like ants. I knew the house was valuable now that they built the new station up the road. I also knew the mortgage was long paid. What I didn't know was how many conversations about me had already happened in my absence. I'm not an investment, I said softly. I'm your mother. For a second, Michael looked up, and I saw my boy at 6, hands sticky with jam, eyes large with wanting me to see his drawing on the fridge. Then he slipped back into the man who wants things not to be messy. It's not like that, he said. It's complicated. We ate soup that tasted like the color gray. Conversation turned to traffic and weather, and either of them could have been used to drown a person. When they left, I packed them slices of walnut cake in foil. Anna kissed the air near my ear. We'll talk again, she said. Soon. She said soon, the way winter says it, certain of its right to arrive. After the door closed, the house settled like a cat after a long stretch. I washed the cups, my hands enjoying the honest burn of hot water. The window fogged, and I wrote my name in it, silly habit, old as rain. On the sill, the geraniums were brave and red. Frank would have said, "Keep your spine, Lenny," and I would have rolled my eyes and done exactly that. I dried my hands and went to the hall to put the cake tin away. That was when I noticed it. The little metal box where I keep important things, birth certificates, the old deed, a photograph of my mother with hair like a storm, was not quite where I'd left it. A smudge on the lid. The tiniest misalignment on the shelf, like a book put back by someone who doesn't believe in endings. I opened it. Paper sat obediently, but the deed was missing its paper clip and tucked half an inch deeper. My fingertips tingled. I told myself not to be dramatic. I told myself I had moved it, but the whisper in my ear was not mine. You're just a burden. I sat on the bottom stair where the light hits just right. I remembered last Sunday when Michael came by alone to check the smoke detectors. He had hugged me and asked for the lemon squeezer, and I, foolish with love, had left him in the hall while I rummaged in the pantry. Had he been in here then, careful with his broad, gentle hands that used to build tower blocks of cereal boxes on Saturday mornings? Or had it been Anna, quick and efficient, the way she is with scarves and sentences? Night came early, pressed its forehead against the window. I turned on the lamp with the crocheted shade, and the room grew small in the kind way. I took the metal box into the kitchen and set it on the table. I laid out each paper like a nurse counting instruments. Births, deaths, utilities, tax. The deed, yes, creased, familiar. But the corner showed a shadow where a copy might have lain. A ghost of a paper. I pinched the bridge of my nose until stars appeared. I am not foolish, though they would have me be. I made myself tea with honey and took out a small notebook I keep for shopping lists and truths. Under the line that says bread, eggs, soap, I wrote, "Ask Michael for key copy. Ask where original deed is kept. Ask who he spoke to at the bank last month." I wrote it slowly, deliberately, like a person carving her name into a branch so the tree remembers she touched it. Then as the house sighed and the geraniums stood guard, I did something I have not done since Frank died. I picked up the phone and called my neighbor, Mrs. Patel, and asked her if she'd be at home tomorrow afternoon. "Of course, Helen," she said. "Everything all right?" I told her yes. I told her no. I told her I needed a witness to a conversation I should have had years ago. I went to bed with my cardigan on and my spine straight, the metal box beneath the bed, close enough to touch if the night asked me for proof. Sleep came slow. On the edge of it, I heard again Anna's clean little sentence and Michael's careful quiet, and I promised myself something small but fierce. The next time they came, I would not set the blue plates. I would not warm the soup. I would open the door and let the cold in and say the word that mothers learn last because it tastes like biting your own tongue. No. That night, sleep never came easy. The shadows of my own curtains looked like strangers waiting to move in. The metal box under my bed was a heartbeat I could feel through the floorboards. Every sound in the house, pipes settling, the fridge humming, the wind against the glass, felt like a question. Was I imagining things, or was the truth quietly rearranging itself when I wasn't looking? I told myself not to be foolish, but foolishness has a way of becoming armor when no one else is standing up for you. In the morning, I boiled water for tea and watched the steam curl like a secret. The smell of toast filled the kitchen, but I could hardly swallow. My hands itched for action. That's when I looked at the notebook on the counter, the one with the shopping lists and truths I had started the night before. My own writing stared back at me like a challenge. Ask Michael for key copy. Ask about the deed. Ask about the bank. Words on paper, but still only words, unless I turned them into something heavier. I folded the page and slipped it into the pocket of my cardigan. The wool felt rough against my palm, but steady. Around 10, I saw Mrs. Patel in her yard, her scarf tied firm against the cold. She waved, warm as always, and I called her over the fence. "Would you mind sitting with me later, just for tea?" She agreed without hesitation. There is a comfort in knowing someone can witness you when the people closest to you would rather not. It made me think of Frank, how he'd always said, "The truth is stronger when someone else hears it." By afternoon, Michael called. His voice was polite, clipped, as though he were a man making a business arrangement. "We thought we'd come by tomorrow," he said. "Talk some more." I nearly said no. The word balanced on my tongue. But then I thought of my notebook, of the misaligned papers, of the lock that once betrayed me. "Fine," I said. "Tomorrow. But Mrs. Patel will be here too." There was a pause, the kind of silence that spreads and thickens. "Why?" he asked finally. "Because I want her to taste my cake," I lied, though we both knew better. He muttered something about Anna's schedule and then hung up. That evening I cleaned the house like I was preparing for battle. The blue plates stayed in the cupboard this time. Instead, I placed plain white ones on the table, heavy and unremarkable. The soup pot remained cold. If they wanted to talk about my life as though it were a ledger, they would do it without the comfort of my cooking. I folded a cloth napkin for Mrs. Patel, neat as a soldier's uniform. On the hall table, I set down the box, empty this time, the papers locked safely in another hiding place. Let them look. Let them wonder. When night came, I sat by the window. Street lights hummed their yellow song, and I thought of my mother's words. The darkest nights show you who's really awake. I realized then that Michael's silence yesterday had been its own betrayal. Not sudden, not loud, but a quiet unraveling that leaves no cloth to cling to. It broke me in a way Anna's words never could. A daughter-in-law may dismiss you. A son is meant to defend you. His absence in that moment was like a room without walls. The next day arrived with frost on the windows. Mrs. Patel came promptly, wrapped in her thick cardigan, carrying a tin of spiced biscuits. She touched my hand and whispered, "Whatever happens, you're not alone." When Michael and Anna arrived, their expressions shifted at the sight of her sitting upright in my chair, tea already poured. Michael cleared his throat, uncomfortable, but Anna spoke first, brisk as always. "Helen, we've been thinking it over. It really is time to make arrangements. You'd be happier with company. You'd be safer." "Safer from what?" I asked quietly. The room went still. I reached beneath the table, drew out the notebook, and placed it beside my cup. "From falling? From loneliness? Or safer for you, Anna, to plan your future without me in it?" Her cheeks flushed, but she smiled that sharp little smile. "We're just trying to help." Mrs. Patel leaned forward then, her eyes kind but firm. "Help must feel like help," she said. "Otherwise it feels like taking." Michael shifted in his seat, fingers tapping the table. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I opened the notebook, ran my finger down the page, and stopped at the line about the deed. "Michael, where is it? The original copy. You said you'd keep it safe. I need to see it." His face paled slightly. "It's with the bank," he stammered. "Routine matter. Don't worry." My heart clenched. For the first time, I felt fear wrap itself around anger. They weren't just thinking. They were already acting. Anna reached for Michael's hand, her nails bright against his skin. "This is why we wanted to bring it up sooner rather than later. Things can be smoother if we manage them." She let the word manage linger like a leash waiting to be fastened. I closed the notebook with a thud that startled even me. "I am not something to be managed," I said. "I built this house with Frank, brick by brick of sacrifice. I bled in this kitchen, bringing life into this world. If you want to talk about transitions, we'll talk about respect first." The room held its breath. Mrs. Patel looked at me, proud, as if I had spoken for 1,000 women before me. Michael rubbed his forehead, the way he used to when he studied for exams. "Ma," he began, but words failed him. For once, silence wasn't his shield, it was his confession. The clock ticked loudly, marking the moment. In that ticking, I realized something. They had already made decisions without me. Tomorrow, the battle would deepen. But today, I had shown them I was not a burden. I was a wall, a voice, a woman who still knew the weight of the word, no. And as they left that afternoon, without soup, without cake, I watched from the doorway. The frost was still thick on the path, but it didn't matter. I had found my footing. What they didn't know was that my next step would not be alone. I had my notebook, my witness, and a truth too sharp to stay hidden much longer. The morning after they left, the house felt heavier, as though the walls had absorbed every word spoken and every silence endured. I sat in the kitchen with my tea, the steam curling upward like a warning. The notebook lay on the table, open to the questions I had written. My handwriting was sharp, almost angry, yet underneath the anger there was fear. What if they had already moved further than I dared to imagine? What if decisions about my life were being made in offices with polished desks and clean-smelling folders? I thought of Frank's voice, steady, sure, telling me once, "Never sign anything without knowing who it serves." He had been gone for 9 years, but his advice felt alive in the quiet of that morning. By mid-morning, I forced myself out into the cold. My coat was too thin, but I pulled it tight and walked to the post office. The clerks there know me by name. I've been sending birthday cards and paying bills at that counter for decades. Today, though, my hands trembled as I asked the young man for a form to request information from the land registry. He looked at me as though I were just another old woman confused by paperwork, but I steadied my voice. "I need to know who holds my deed," I said. His eyebrows rose slightly, but he handed me the form. I filled it out at the counter, letters pressed deep into the paper, as though weight would make them more true. On the walk back, Mrs. Patel caught up with me. She held her shopping bag close, the oranges inside bumping against each other. "How did it go yesterday?" she asked. I told her enough for her to understand. Anna's words, Michael's silence, the missing ease of family. Her lips pressed tight, but she didn't say what I knew she was thinking. Instead, she said softly, "If they push, you must pull back harder. This is your life." Her certainty gave me strength. We walked together until our paths divided, and she squeezed my arm before heading home. At noon, the phone rang. It was Michael again, his voice tense. "Ma, listen. Anna's uncle works at the bank. He just mentioned it might be easier if we transfer the house title temporarily, so paperwork is handled without delays. It's just procedure. You'll still have rights." My hand froze around the receiver. Temporarily, procedure, rights. These words, dressed in the suit of reassurance, were really wolves. My voice shook but didn't break. "No, Michael," I said, each syllable firm. "This house is mine. Your father built it with me. It is not to be transferred, not temporarily, not ever." Silence on his end, then a sigh. "I just don't want this to be difficult." The line went dead before I could answer. I stood there, the phone heavy in my hand. For the first time, I allowed myself to think something unbearable. Perhaps Anna's words had not been the worst part. Perhaps the worst part was discovering how easily Michael bent to them, as if the boy I raised had been quietly reshaped into someone I barely knew. My chest tightened, but I refused to cry. Tears felt like giving them permission. That evening, I invited Mrs. Patel back. Over tea, I showed her the notebook, the form from the registry, the careful notes I had begun to keep. "If they try anything," I said, "I want someone else to know the truth, someone to speak if I cannot." She nodded, her eyes kind but fierce. "I'll stand with you, Helen. I promise." The comfort of that promise wrapped around me like a shawl. I was no longer alone, even if my own son could not be trusted. The next day, the post brought a thin envelope from the city office. My fingers shook as I opened it. The letter confirmed that the property was still in my name, but it also noted that a request had been made recently to update ownership details. My stomach dropped. A request had been made. By whom? I hadn't signed a thing. My breath came fast, shallow. Could Michael? No. Anna? No. Both of them? My hands clenched the paper so tightly that the edges cut into my palm. Proof. At last, something real. Proof that the whispers I had heard in their silences were not just paranoia. I locked the letter in my metal box, heart pounding. When I looked at the shelf where it sat, I realized something important. Fear had turned into fuel. They might try to paint me as weak, forgetful, confused, but I had clarity now, and clarity is a weapon. That night I dreamed of Frank. He was standing in the garden pruning the roses, his back strong, his hands sure. He looked up and said, "They'll take everything if you let them. Don't let them." I woke with the echo of his words, tears wetting my pillow. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a command. The following morning, I dressed carefully, pulled on my warm scarf, and made my way to the lawyer's office in town. The receptionist gave me a polite but distracted smile, but when I explained my concern, the lawyer himself came out to greet me. He listened patiently as I unfolded the story. Anna's words, Michael's silence, the missing papers, the letter from the city. He nodded gravely and took copies of everything. "Mrs. Harper," he said, using my name with weight, "you must be very careful. If they are attempting to alter ownership without your full consent, that is fraud, but you have acted wisely. Keep records, do not sign anything, and let me handle the rest." When I walked out of that office, the winter air felt less cold. My steps were slow, yes, but steady. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faint stirrings of power. They thought I was a burden. They thought silence would make me surrender. But they had underestimated the strength of a woman who has spent her life carrying others. I will not be carried out of my home, not while I still have breath in my body. That evening I sat by the window, pen in hand, and wrote in my notebook, "They've begun, but so have I." The days that followed felt like walking across a frozen lake, every step uncertain, every sound beneath my feet a warning crack. I carried the lawyer's words in my chest like a candle, small but fierce. "Do not sign anything. Keep records. Let me handle the rest." Still, I knew the storm would not wait for lawyers and papers. It was already brewing inside my own family. That Thursday, Michael arrived without calling first. The knock on the door was his, hesitant, familiar, but when I opened it, the man on the step felt like a stranger. His eyes avoided mine, his mouth tight, as if every word was pre-chewed. "Ma," he said softly, "can I come in?" I stepped aside, my heart heavy, the scent of cold clinging to his coat. He sat at the kitchen table, the very place he had once drawn stick figures with crayons, and tapped his fingers against the wood. "Anna thinks you're being stubborn," he began. The words stung, but not as much as the fact that he said Anna thinks, not I think. Where was my son in this conversation? Where was the boy who once defended me in the schoolyard when neighbors' kids called me old lady before my time? His silence had become her voice. "I'm being careful," I answered, pouring him tea without asking if he wanted it. "Careful because someone tried to change the ownership of this house." His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "Where did you hear that?" My hands didn't shake, though I felt them want to. "From the city office. They wrote to me. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" He rubbed his forehead, the same gesture he used before exams. "Ma, it's not like that. It's just paperwork. To make things smoother. Anna's uncle suggested it." My voice rose then, sharp as broken glass. "Smoother for who? For me? Or for the two of you, planning my absence like a holiday?" The silence that followed stretched until it nearly tore. He looked older than I remembered, lines at the corners of his mouth, but all I saw was the boy I had carried through sleepless nights. "You raised me better," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "You raised me to stand for the truth," he said suddenly, almost bitterly. "But the truth is that you can't live here forever. You'll fall, you'll get sick, and then I'll be the one blamed for not doing enough." His words should have softened me. They should have, but instead they hardened something inside. So your solution, I said slowly, is to take the very roof over my head, to turn my years of work into numbers in a bank account. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was the answer. That night, I wrote everything in my notebook, every word, every pause, the way his eyes darted when I mentioned the city's letter. Then I placed the notebook back in the metal box and slid it beneath my bed again. But the thought haunted me. If they had already tried once, what would stop them from trying again? 2 days later, Anna came alone. She carried herself like someone entering a negotiation, not a home. Her perfume filled the hallway before she did, sharp and citrusy. "Helen," she said sweetly, "I just want to talk woman to woman." She sat in the living room, legs crossed neatly, eyes glinting with the confidence of someone who believes the end has already been decided. "You deserve comfort," she began, her voice sugar over steel. "Think about it. Meals prepared, nurses on call, activities, friends your age. You wouldn't have to struggle anymore." I listened, nodding, but inside me a storm brewed. "Comfort," I repeated. "Is that what you call stealing?" Her smile faltered. "Don't be dramatic." But drama was already here, living in the walls. I stood and walked to the cabinet, pulled out the envelope from the city, and laid it on the table between us. "Explain this then. If you're only thinking of my comfort, why was there a request to update the ownership of this house? Who sent it?" Her eyes flickered, just for a second, then she leaned back. "You're misinterpreting. Michael handled that. It was just precaution." Her words dripped calm, but her hands betrayed her, fingers tapping the armrest, restless. "I will not leave this house," I said firmly, "and if either of you tries again, I have a lawyer now. Do you understand?" The shift in her expression was subtle but real. Surprise, perhaps even fear. She hadn't expected resistance, not from me. "You're making this harder than it has to be," she hissed, dropping the mask of politeness. "You think anyone will believe your stories? You're an old woman, alone, forgetful." The words cut deep, but I stood straighter, fueled by rage. "I may be old, but I am not invisible, and I am not alone." I thought of Mrs. Patel, of the lawyer, of Frank's voice in my dreams. "You underestimate what a burden can do when pushed too far." She rose, grabbed her purse, and left without another word. The slam of the door echoed through the house like a gunshot. I sat down slowly, my heart pounding. My hands trembled now, but not from fear, from the sheer weight of the fight ahead. That evening, Mrs. Patel came by with soup. I told her everything. She listened, eyes widening, then placed her hand over mine. "You must be ready, Helen. They won't stop, but neither will you." Later that night, as I walked through the quiet rooms of my house, I touched the walls, the photos, the furniture polished by years of hands and time. This was not just a house. It was the map of my life, every corner etched with memory. To lose it would be to lose myself. So I made a vow, out loud, in the stillness. They will not take this from me, not while I live, not while I remember. The words filled the air, solid as stone, and though the night pressed in cold and close, I felt something stir inside me. Not just resistance, but resolve. What they didn't know was that I had already begun gathering allies. What they didn't know was that the story they were writing for me was about to be rewritten by my own hand. The days after Anna's visit passed like heavy clouds, low and gray, pressing down on the roof of my house. I could feel her words still clinging to the air, that sharp hiss. You're an old woman, alone, forgetful. They wanted me to believe it, to shrink into their description of me. But each time I repeated her words in my head, something stubborn in me grew stronger. Forgetful? I remembered everything, every corner of this house, every promise Frank ever made, every sacrifice I had laid at Michael's feet so he could stand taller. No, I was not forgetful. I was awake, wide awake. The lawyer called me on Monday morning. His voice was calm but serious. Mrs. Harper, I've reviewed the documents you left. The request made to update ownership was not filed by you, yet it carried your name. My breath caught. Forged. He didn't say the word, but it hung there. We've already contacted the registry to freeze any changes until we sort this out. If anyone tries again, they'll be blocked. I thanked him, though my throat was tight, my heart galloping. When I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, my hands pressed against the wood, steadying myself. I thought about Michael then. Did he know? Did he sign something, tricked by Anna's words, or had he been the hand behind it all along? That question burned hotter than any kettle I could put on the stove. I wanted to believe my son was still inside that silence, still reachable, still the boy who once held my hand crossing streets. But the shadows of doubt were growing darker. That afternoon, Mrs. Patel came over with her knitting. We sat together, the quiet click of her needles filling the room. I told her what the lawyer had said. Her hands never stopped moving, but her eyes lifted to mine, fierce. Then it is worse than we thought, she said. You must be ready for them to deny it, to twist it back on you. She was right. Already, I could hear Anna's voice rehearsing it. She's confused. She must have signed and forgotten. That evening, I pulled out the metal box again. I spread the papers on the table like a deck of cards, birth certificates, bills, the deed, the city's letter, proof of a life, proof of my name. I laid the notebook beside them, pages filling quickly with my neat script, dates, times, phrases spoken, expressions noticed. It looked almost like a diary, but it wasn't for me. It was for whoever would need to see one day that I had not been blind. The next morning, Michael returned. This time he came alone, his shoulders slumped as though the weight of the world was on them. He didn't ask for tea. He didn't sit down. He stood in the doorway of the kitchen, looking at me like a boy again, lost. Ma, did Anna come by? He asked. His voice was low, careful. I nodded. She did, and she showed me her true face. His lips pressed tight. He leaned against the doorframe, rubbing the back of his neck. She means well, he muttered. I laughed, bitter and short. Does she? Does forging my name mean well? Does trying to steal my house mean well? His eyes widened. What? No, she wouldn't. But the words died. He knew, or at least he suspected. I stepped closer, my finger pointing at him like a weapon. Michael, tell me the truth. Did you sign something? Did you give her permission? His silence was longer this time. His eyes dropped to the floor. I thought it was just routine. She said it was just to make things easier. She said it wouldn't change anything. His confession sliced through me. My son, my own blood, had handed over my future because it was easier than saying no to her. I felt my knees weaken, but I did not sit. You betrayed me, I whispered. His head shot up, panic in his eyes. No, Ma, I didn't mean, but I cut him off with a wave of my hand. You chose silence once, and now you chose ignorance. Both wound the same. Tears filled his eyes, but I did not comfort him. I had done enough comforting in my life. He left soon after, muttering apologies that sounded like ashes. I watched from the window as he walked down the path, his figure bent, his steps uncertain. A part of me wanted to run after him, to pull him back into my arms, but I stayed rooted. Sometimes love must stand like a wall, unmovable, to protect itself. That night I dreamed again of Frank. He was in the living room this time, sitting in his old chair, the one with the worn armrest. He looked at me, his eyes calm, and said, "A house is more than bricks, Lenny. It's the story of who we are. Guard it." I woke with his words burning in my chest. The next day, Anna arrived again, this time with flowers in her hands, cheap supermarket flowers, bright and scentless. She smiled sweetly. "Helen, I brought these to cheer you up. I think we got off on the wrong foot the other day." I didn't take the flowers. I let her hold them awkwardly at her side. "I know what you tried," I said, my voice steady. Her smile froze. "What do you mean?" I stepped closer, close enough that she had to meet my eyes. "The city wrote to me. They told me someone tried to change the deed. The lawyer confirmed it. So don't play innocent in my house." For the first time, I saw fear in her. It was small, quick, but it was there. She quickly masked it with a laugh. "Oh, Helen, you must have misunderstood. You know how paperwork can be." But her hands fidgeted with the flowers, petals falling to the floor. "You underestimated me," I said quietly. "I may be old, but I am not foolish, and I will fight you." She stared at me for a long moment, then set the flowers on the table and walked out without another word. When the door closed, I felt my heart pounding like a drum. I sank into a chair, my body shaking, but my spirit strong. They were slipping now. Their masks were cracking, and I had proof, witnesses, and will. That evening, Mrs. Patel and I walked together down Ash Lane. The air was cold, but the sky was clear, stars scattered like promises. She squeezed my arm and said, "They've shown their hand. Now it's your turn." I looked up at the stars and whispered to Frank, "I'm ready." The morning after Anna left the flowers behind, I found myself staring at them on the kitchen table. Their colors were loud, artificial, their petals already curling at the edges. They didn't belong here, not among the geraniums Frank and I had planted, not among the memories that carried weight and truth. I picked them up, walked to the back door, and dropped them straight into the trash bin. The sound of the lid closing felt final, like slamming a chapter shut. But chapters never close neatly. By mid-morning, the phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something in my bones told me to answer. "Mrs. Harper?" a woman's voice asked, brisk and professional. "This is Janet from the bank. We just need to confirm some details about the title transfer you initiated." My blood ran cold. "Excuse me?" I said sharply. "I initiated no such thing." The woman hesitated. "Well, it lists your name and signature. I just wanted to verify before finalizing." My hands trembled, but my voice came out like steel. "Do not finalize anything. That signature is a forgery. If you proceed, you will be part of a crime." I slammed the phone down before she could reply, my heart pounding so hard I had to grip the counter to steady myself. They had tried again. Even after warnings, even after my lawyer froze the documents, they had tried again. I rushed to the living room, pulled the notebook from its hiding place, and wrote it all down. Date, time, name, the exact words. My hand pressed so hard the pen nearly tore the page. Then I picked up the phone again, called the lawyer, and repeated every detail. He listened carefully, then said, "Mrs. Harper, this proves intent. We'll escalate this legally. Do not speak to them alone again." But it wasn't just the law I was thinking of. It was my son, my Michael. How far was he willing to let Anna lead him? Would he stand by as his own mother's signature was forged, her home stolen? The thought gnawed at me until tears burned my eyes. I wanted to believe he was innocent, still caught, still confused, but his silence was beginning to look like consent. That afternoon, I baked bread. It might sound foolish, but kneading dough, feeling it push back against my palms, gave me strength. The smell of yeast filled the kitchen, warm and alive, reminding me of the years when Michael was small and would stand on a chair to watch me shape loaves. I remembered his giggles, his sticky hands reaching for the warm crust. That boy felt so far away now, hidden under layers of weakness and Anna's control. But as the bread rose, I swore to myself that I would not let him or anyone erase who I was. When evening fell, Mrs. Patel came over, bringing her grandson with her. The boy, barely 10, sat at my table, eating slices of bread with butter, his laughter spilling into the corners of the house. It reminded me of a time when my own house was loud with joy. Mrs. Patel looked at me knowingly. "Life continues, Helen," she said softly, "but it must continue on your terms." The next day brought another knock on my door. When I opened it, Michael stood there, pale, eyes red, his coat wrinkled as if he hadn't slept. "Ma, please," he said, stepping inside without waiting. He clutched a folded paper in his hands. "I didn't know, I swear. Anna, she went ahead. I thought it was only talk, but she—" His voice broke. He handed me the paper, and I saw at once it was another form already filled, my name scribbled in unfamiliar strokes. My stomach churned. "She forged it," I whispered. He nodded miserably. I confronted her. "She said it was for our future, for stability. She said you wouldn't fight her, but you did." He sat heavily at the table, burying his face in his hands. "I don't know what to do, Ma. I love her, but I love you too." For a moment, I almost reached for him, almost pulled him into my arms, like I had when he was a child. But then I remembered the phone call, the forged name, the audacity of their plan. I stood straighter instead. "You do know what to do, Michael. You must choose, not between me and her, but between right and wrong." His shoulders shook, but he said nothing. When he left, I felt no relief, only sorrow. The kind of sorrow that settles deep, like a stone at the bottom of a well. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the darkened rooms of the house, touching the walls, the photos, the worn banister polished by years of hands. This house wasn't just wood and plaster. It was memory, sacrifice, proof of a life lived fully. To lose it would be to lose myself, and I refused to let them win. I sat down at the kitchen table, lit a small lamp, and opened my notebook. On a new page, I wrote in large letters, "They tried again. They forged my name. Michael knows now. He is weak, but he sees. I will not surrender, not to Anna, not to anyone." When I put the pen down, I realized something had changed. I was no longer just defending my house. I was defending my dignity, my history, my place in this world. They called me a burden, but burdens carry weight. And sometimes weight is what keeps things from blowing away. The next morning, I woke with a strange calmness. I dressed carefully, combed my hair, and sat by the window with my tea. I didn't know what the next battle would look like, but I knew one thing. They had underestimated me. And underestimation is a powerful weapon, because the truth was simple. I had been silent for too long, but silence was over. The next days carried a strange weight, as though the very air in my home had thickened. I moved through the room slowly, touching the furniture, listening to the floorboards. Everything whispered back to me, "Hold on, don't let go." But behind that whisper, I felt the tension growing. Anna was not finished. And Michael, my poor, silent Michael, he was unraveling between us, thread by thread. On Wednesday, the lawyer called again. His tone was sharper this time. "Mrs. Harper, I've spoken with the bank. They've confirmed attempts were made under your name, but we've blocked them. Still, the persistence worries me. Whoever is behind this won't stop easily." I thanked him, though my chest felt like it had been nailed shut. After we hung up, I sat by the window for a long while, staring out at the frost-covered garden. The geraniums on the sill were still alive, small bursts of red against the cold. They reminded me of myself, fragile to the eye, but stubborn at the root. That afternoon, Michael came again. His face was gray with guilt, his hands restless. "Ma, I told Anna to stop. I begged her. But she says she's only thinking about the future." He paused, then added quietly, "She says you're dangerous to yourself now, that if something happens, I'll be blamed." Dangerous to myself. The phrase stung like vinegar on a wound. I looked at him steadily. "And do you believe her?" His eyes darted away. He didn't answer. His silence was louder than any confession. I felt the anger rise in me, hot and clear. "I raised you with my own hands, Michael. Do you think the woman who carried you through fevers, who worked nights to buy your school books, has suddenly turned reckless? No. What's dangerous is the greed in this house, the lies that wear your wife's perfume." He winced, as though my words struck flesh, but he didn't deny them. He only muttered, "I don't know what to do," and left me standing there, the cold from the open door creeping into my bones. That night, I lit the lamp beside Frank's old chair and sat down with the notebook. My hand trembled as I wrote. "They call me dangerous now. They are building a story to erase me. But I see it. I see it all." The pen dug grooves into the page. I pressed harder, making sure the ink would not fade with time. The next morning, Mrs. Patel knocked on my door. She brought samosas wrapped in foil, their spice filling the air. As we ate, I told her everything. Michael's silence, Anna's new accusation. Her eyes flashed with indignation. "They want to paint you as unfit," she said firmly. "That way, when they move against you, no one will question it." Her words chilled me. I imagined Anna's smooth voice, telling neighbors or officials. "She forgets things. She leaves the stove on. She's unsafe." Lies planted like seeds, watered until they grew into a false reality. I clenched my fists. "Then I must stay sharper than ever," I whispered. That afternoon, I made a decision. I called the lawyer again and asked him to come by. When he arrived the next day, I laid everything before him: the notebook, the letters, the phone call from the bank, even the forged signature Michael had brought me. He studied it all carefully, then looked at me with a steady gaze. "Mrs. Harper, you are building a case stronger than stone. Keep every scrap of proof. When the time comes, these will speak louder than any accusation." His confidence strengthened me, but it also revealed the truth. This was no longer just family conflict. This was war, fought with documents, lies, and silence. That evening, When the sun sank and the house turned blue with shadow, I found myself speaking aloud to Frank's photograph on the mantel. They think I'm weak. They think I'll fold. But I won't, Frank. Not while your voice is still in my ear. Not while this house still carries your touch. The next day, Anna herself came again, this time not alone. She brought her cousin, a tall man in a suit, carrying a folder. They walked in as though they owned the place already. My heart pounded, but I stood tall. "Helen," Anna began, her smile tight. "This is just to clarify things. A representative. Nothing official yet." The man opened his folder, pulling out papers. "We're only here to discuss options," he said smoothly. "Retirement communities, property transfers, assisted living, standard procedures." His tone was oily, professional, but I could smell the rot beneath it. I didn't touch the papers. Instead, I walked slowly to the kitchen, brought out my notebook, and laid it open on the table. Every visit, every word, every attempt, all written here. You can show me your papers, but I have mine too. The man blinked, taken aback. Anna's face darkened. "You don't have to be hostile," she snapped. I met her eyes without flinching. "And you don't have to be a thief. But here we are." The silence that followed was thick, brittle. Finally they left, muttering about misunderstandings. I locked the door behind them, my breath shaking, but my spine unbent. That night, Mrs. Patel called. "I saw them leaving your house," she said. "You must be careful now. They're cornered, and cornered people strike harder." I looked at the notebook on the table, its pages glowing faintly in the lamplight. She was right. The battle was tightening, the walls were closing in, but I felt something inside me, strong as the roots of the geraniums in the frost. They called me a burden. They called me forgetful. They called me dangerous. But soon, they would call me something else entirely, unstoppable. The morning after Anna brought that man with the folder, I woke before dawn. The house was quiet, too quiet, as though it were holding its breath with me. I sat in the kitchen with the lamp on and stared at the notebook. Its pages were now thick with ink, a record of every betrayal, every silence, every attempt to erase me. It looked small on the table, but I knew it was heavier than anything Anna or her cousin carried in their polished folders. My words were my shield, my weapon. I thought of Frank again, his voice in my memory. "Write it down, Lenny. Truth is stronger when it's kept on paper." He had said it about bills, about savings, about his work in the factory, but it was just as true now. I whispered back, "I'm writing, Frank. I'm writing it all." By mid-morning, there was another knock at my door. For a moment, my heart clenched, but it was only Mrs. Patel. She stepped in with her scarf tight around her head, bringing the smell of ginger and cardamom with her. "I saw lights on," she said, setting a flask of chai on the table. "You couldn't sleep?" I shook my head. She sat across from me, her hand covering mine. "They came with papers once. Next time they'll come with stories. You must be ready." Her words settled heavy in my chest. Stories, that was the new danger. They could spread lies about me, whisper that I was confused, that I forgot things, that I was unsafe alone. Lies travel fast, and truth struggles to keep up. That afternoon I tested myself. I walked from room to room, naming everything aloud. "This is Frank's chair. This is the dresser we bought in '79. This is the clock from Michael's graduation." I spoke like a teacher proving her lesson. My memory was sharp, my mind clear, my steps steady. If they tried to claim otherwise, I would not let them win. 2 days later, Michael arrived again. His face was weary, his eyes bloodshot. He looked older than his years, worn down by a battle he pretended wasn't happening. "Ma," he said quietly, "Anna thinks we should take further steps. She says you're not safe here anymore. She's talking about medical evaluations." I froze. Medical evaluations. My heart thudded. This was their next move, to paint me as unfit, to let a doctor's words cut deeper than any forged signature. I set my tea down carefully, though my hand shook. "And what do you think, Michael?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "I don't know. Maybe it would help prove you're fine. Or maybe," his voice trailed off, "or maybe it would give her the paper she needs to finish what she started," I snapped. His face crumpled. "Ma, I just don't want you to get hurt." I stood, my voice rising. "And I don't want to be erased. Do you understand? Erased from my own home, from my own life." The words cracked in the air. He flinched but said nothing more. He left soon after, his silence more painful than any argument. That night, I called my lawyer again. I told him about Anna's new plan, about Michael's mention of evaluations. He sighed. "It's common in cases like this. They may try to declare you incompetent, but don't worry, Mrs. Harper. We can arrange for an independent assessment, one you choose. You'll be prepared." His calmness steadied me, but fear still scratched at my chest. To be judged like that, to have strangers decide if I was still whole, it felt crueler than theft. The following morning, I went into town. I visited the library, something I hadn't done in years. The librarian, a kind woman with gray streaks in her hair, recognized me at once. "Helen, it's been too long." I asked for books on property rights, elder law, guardianship. She didn't question it, just stacked them carefully for me. "Knowledge is power," she said with a wink. Carrying them home, I felt like I was bringing home armor. At the kitchen table, I read late into the evening. I underlined sentences, wrote notes in the margins of my notebook. The more I learned, the clearer it became. They weren't just trying to move me. They were trying to silence me legally, permanently. And once that happened, no words, no protests, no notebooks would matter. That realization filled me not with despair, but with fire. They thought they could strip me quietly, like picking pockets. But I would not go quietly. On Sunday, Mrs. Patel came again. I showed her the stack of books, the pages of my notes. She listened, her eyes shining with admiration. "You're fighting back," she said. "Not many would. You're stronger than you know." As she spoke, her grandson came running into the room, laughing, carrying a paper airplane. It soared across the table and landed among my papers. I picked it up gently, smiling at the boy. "See, even paper can fly when you fold it right." And then it struck me. My own papers could fly too. My words, my records, my proof. They could reach beyond this house, beyond Anna's reach. That night, I wrote letters. One to my lawyer, one to a trusted cousin in another city, one to myself, to be opened only if something happened. In each, I explained everything, attached copies of documents, made clear that my will was strong, my mind sharp, my choices my own. I sealed them carefully and hid them in different places. When I finally went to bed, I felt a strange peace. I had turned fear into preparation, silence into testimony. If Anna wanted war, she would find me armed. As I drifted into sleep, I heard Frank's voice once more, low and steady. "They can call you a burden, Lenny, but a burden keeps things grounded. Without weight, everything blows away." I whispered back into the dark, "Then let me be weight. Let me be the stone they cannot lift." The week that followed was one of the longest of my life. Each day felt stretched thin, like fabric pulled too tight. I moved carefully through the hours, watching, listening, waiting for the next strike. And it came. Oh, it came. On Tuesday morning, a letter arrived. The envelope bore the logo of a medical practice I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as I opened it. We are writing to confirm your scheduled evaluation regarding independent living capacity. The words blurred for a moment as rage rushed to my head. Scheduled, without my consent. Someone had arranged for strangers to come and judge me like livestock. I called my lawyer immediately. He listened, then sighed. This is exactly what I feared. They're pushing for incompetency. But don't panic, Mrs. Harper. We'll block this appointment. You have the right to refuse and to request your own assessment. Keep the letter. I hung up, my hands shaking, the letter fluttering like a dead leaf in my fingers. I sat at the table for a long time staring at it. Finally, I opened my notebook and wrote in bold strokes. They are trying to erase me through medicine now. They will not succeed. Writing it down felt like carving it into stone. That afternoon, Michael came. His face told me everything before his mouth opened. He knew. Ma, he began, it's not what you think. It's just to make sure you're safe. I slammed the letter down on the table between us. Without asking me? Without my agreement? That's not safety, Michael. That's betrayal. His lips trembled. Anna said it was the best way. She said, I cut him off, my voice shaking. Stop saying Anna said. I want to know what you say. For once he looked me in the eye, and what I saw there was not strength. It was fear. I don't know anymore, he whispered. The words crushed me. My son, lost in the storm of his own making. But pity was a luxury I couldn't afford. Then let me make it clear for you, I said coldly. I will not leave this house. I will not be declared incompetent. If you and your wife try again, I will take you both to court. And this time, you will not be the boy I remember. You will be the defendant. His face blanched. He stammered, Ma, please. But I turned away, dismissing him with silence. He left soon after, shoulders slumped, and I locked the door behind him. That evening, Mrs. Patel came. I showed her the letter. Her eyes widened with fury. They're desperate now, she said. They've failed twice, so they try another way. But you've prepared, Helen. You're ready. She stayed with me until nightfall, her presence a steady flame against the dark. In the quiet after she left, I walked through the house, touching everything that was mine, every photo, every corner, every worn object that held my life inside it. And I thought, they want to strip me of this, not because I am weak, but because I am strong, because they know I won't hand it over willingly. 2 days later, I went to town to meet with my lawyer in person. He reviewed the letter and nodded grimly. This confirms their intent, but will respond legally. You'll undergo an independent evaluation by a doctor we choose. That will settle the matter. He handed me papers to sign, protecting my rights. As I signed, I felt a surge of defiance. My signature was mine. No forgery, no stolen ink. When I returned home, I found Anna waiting at my doorstep. Her smile was painted on, her eyes sharp. Helen, she said sweetly, I hear you're making things more difficult than they need to be. I unlocked the door without answering, but she followed me inside. Why are you fighting us? She asked, setting her purse on my table as though she owned it. We're offering you comfort. We're thinking about the future. Do you really want to live alone until something terrible happens? I turned on her, anger finally breaking free. Comfort? You call forged signatures comfort? You call stealing my house concern? You call arranging doctors behind my back love? You don't want my comfort. You want my silence. Her mask slipped then. Her mouth hardened, her voice low and cold. You can fight, Helen, but you won't win forever. Time is on our side. I stepped closer, so close she had to look me in the eyes. No, time is on mine, because every day I breathe in this house is another day I win. For the first time, she looked unsettled. She grabbed her purse and left without another word, the door slamming so hard the windows rattled. That night, I sat with the notebook again. I wrote, "They fear me now. They know I will not bend. But fear makes people dangerous. I must be careful." My hand ached, but I wrote until the page was full. The next morning I baked again. This time a walnut cake, Frank's favorite. As it baked, the house filled with warmth, with memory. I realized something important. No matter what they tried, they could never take this from me. The smell of home, the taste of love, the weight of memory, that was mine, untouchable. When Mrs. Patel came that afternoon, we shared the cake with her grandson. His laughter filled the house, bright and alive. And I thought, let them plan, let them forge, let them whisper, I am not alone, I am not defeated. Because the truth is this, I may be 73, but I am not finished. I am not gone. And before this battle ends, they will learn what a so-called burden can carry. The final week of this long battle began with a silence so deep, it felt like the pause before a storm. Michael had not come. Anna had not called. Even the neighbors, who usually nodded from their windows, seemed to watch me differently, as though they'd heard whispers. I knew Anna's tongue had been busy, painting me as forgetful, confused, a danger to myself. Lies are quick little things. They can run through streets faster than truth. But I had prepared. My notebook was full, my lawyer armed with every paper, every forgery, every phone call. And I had my own strength, sharpened like a blade over these months of betrayal. It was Friday morning when the storm arrived. A knock at the door, firm, official. When I opened it, 2 people stood there. A woman in a gray suit, a man with a clipboard. Their smiles were rehearsed. "Mrs. Harper?" the woman asked. "We're here for your evaluation." For a moment, fear gripped me. This was it, the move Anna had been waiting for. I took a deep breath. "No," I said firmly. "You are not." They exchanged glances, surprised. I held up the letter from my lawyer, the one stating any medical evaluation must be arranged through me by my choice. "This visit is unauthorized. Leave now or I call the police." The woman hesitated. The man frowned, but my voice was steady, unwavering. "You will not step into my home. Not today, not ever." Finally, with a muttered apology, they turned and left. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, my knees weak, but my spirit blazing. That afternoon, Michael arrived, alone. His face was drawn, his shoulders heavy. He didn't sit. He stood in the hallway, eyes wet. "Ma," he whispered, "I don't know how to fix this." I looked at him, my son, the boy I had once held, the man who had betrayed me through silence. My heart ached, but my voice was firm. "Then listen to me. Stop choosing silence. Stop choosing what's easy. Choose what's right. You can't have both. He broke then, tears streaming, his voice raw. I let her twist me. I let her decide for me. I thought I was protecting you, but I was protecting myself from her anger, and I lost you in the process. For the first time in months, I stepped closer. My hand touched his cheek, rough with stubble. You haven't lost me yet, I said softly, but you will, if you don't stand up now. That evening, something shifted. Michael stayed, sat at the table with me, ate the soup I'd made. For the first time, he told me things, how Anna had pressed, how her family had encouraged her, how they had dangled promises of financial gain. His shame poured out like a flood. I listened, my anger cooling into sorrow. At last, when he was empty, I said, then stand with me when the truth comes out. Be my son again. 2 days later, it came to a head. Anna returned, this time furious. She stormed into my house without knocking, her words sharp as knives. You ruined everything, she spat. Do you think anyone will believe you? You're old, you're frail. Michael knows what's best. But Michael, sitting at the table, stood up. No, Anna, not anymore. His voice shook, but he stood tall. I've seen what you've done. I saw the forged papers. I heard the lies. I won't let you destroy her. Anna froze, her eyes wide. Michael! But he cut her off. No, you wanted me to betray my mother. I almost did, but I won't anymore. The silence that followed was thunderous. Anna's face twisted with rage. She grabbed her purse, her words bitter. You'll regret this. Then she was gone, the door slamming behind her like an ending. I sank into a chair, my hands trembling. Michael knelt beside me, tears on his face. I'm sorry, Ma. I almost lost myself. I stroked his hair like I had when he was a boy. Then find yourself again, with truth, with courage. That's all I ask. In the days that followed, my lawyer filed charges: fraud, forgery, attempted theft. The case will take time, but the path is clear now. The law is on my side because truth is heavier than lies. And in my house, peace returned. The geraniums still bloomed, red and stubborn. Mrs. Patel still brought chai and laughter. Michael visited often now, quieter, humbler, but present. The silence that once betrayed me began to heal. One evening, as the sun set and the kitchen filled with golden light, I sat with my notebook. I turned to the last page and wrote, They called me a burden, but a burden is weight, and weight is what keeps the world from flying apart. I was never a burden. I was the anchor, and now they know it. I closed the notebook, placed it in the metal box, and slid it onto the shelf. Then I stood, straightened my back, and whispered to the empty room, Frank, I kept our home. I kept our story. And to those who would listen, I ask now, did you like my story? From which city are you watching?